The Buddha once taught that a solid inner self is not proven by echoing moral platitudes during times of peace. Instead, it is truly revealed only when the winds of life blow, bringing with them gain and loss, praise and blame, honor and disgrace and suffering. To more deeply understand this psychological state, we can look at an event in the life of Zen Master Hakuin. One day, while the Zen Master was quietly sweeping leaves in the courtyard, a local family arrived in a state of extreme rage. They threw a newborn baby at the master, hurling vile insults and slandering his reputation. The source of this fury came from their daughter, who, out of sheer terror, had falsely accused the master of being the father of her child. Standing before heavy humiliation, with his prestige trampled, and the contemptuous glares of those around him, the Zen Master did not become angry, nor did he seek to justify himself. He simply smiled and gently uttered 3 words. "Is that so?" Then he carefully took the infant into his arms. From that day forward, whether through storms or freezing cold, the master patiently carried the tiny being to knock on every door, begging for a spoonful of milk, despite the mockery and disdain the world threw at him. A few years later, the young girl, overwhelmed by a towering sense of guilt, suffered a crisis of conscience and confessed the truth. The biological father of the child was actually a poor young fishmonger. Upon realizing they had wrongly accused a good man, the entire family rushed to him in a panic, prostrating themselves to beg for forgiveness and heart-wrenchingly asking to take the child back. The Zen Master graciously returned the baby. His face remained as calm as an autumn lake as he gently uttered those same 3 words. "Is that so?" His inner self was completely empty and silent. There was not a trace of arrogance for being proven right, nor any attachment or resentment regarding the injustices he had endured. This story exposes a very authentic perspective on human nature. Normally, when life goes smoothly, it is very easy for us to put on a cloak of kindness, being ready to be tolerant and speak beautiful words. However, a person's true nature is often most clearly revealed when their personal interests are touched, or when they suddenly fall into circumstances full of injustice and hardship. When the ego is threatened, the natural human instinct is to bristle in resistance, getting angry and arguing to protect one's honor. Zen Master Hakuin went against that instinct. He used absolute stillness to receive the winds of humiliation, proving that calmness, altruism, and compassion in the face of adversity are the highest measures of a solid inner self. To bring this stillness into practical life, you do not need to immediately achieve extraordinary things. Every time you face injustice or harsh criticism, instead of rushing into an argument to prove yourself right, try to focus your entire attention on your breath. Feel the flow of air entering and leaving. At the same time, observe the burning sensation or irritation surging in your chest. You do not need to suppress the anger. Just quietly watch it as an observer. When you allow yourself to pause for a few breaths before reacting, you create a safe space. Within that space, understanding will sprout, helping you realize that responding with anger is like picking up a hot coal with your own bare hands. By refusing to accept negativity, you protect the clarity of your mind and keep your inner self from wavering before the storm. That stability is not the result of mystical miracles or distant theories. It stems from a very natural principle that the ancients called the ordinary mind is the way. True wisdom and morality do not lie in hollow, lofty rhetoric, but are clearly demonstrated through how a person practices goodness in daily life. Zen Master Hakuin did not need to stand on a high podium to explain complex moral lessons to prove his innocence. He demonstrated the truth through the simplest of actions: begging for milk, protecting and nurturing a small life for years on end. His stillness was the absolute consistency between internal perception and external action. In modern life, we often encounter many people who speak very eloquently about compassion, talking incessantly about sharing and love for humanity. Yet, the moment they step out of those conversations, they behave rudely, irritably, and hold a haughty attitude toward those they perceive as weaker, such as a server or a cleaner. This contradiction exposes a hypocritical heart, where morality is merely an ornament used to beautify the external shell rather than a genuine cultivation from within. If you want to nurture true wisdom, start by adjusting your smallest daily interactions. Observe how you speak to people who bring you no economic benefit or status. When you buy something on the street or receive a small favor, give back a sincere smile and a respectful gaze. Maintaining an equal and harmonious attitude in every word, voice, and thought daily, without acting solemn or superior, is when you are truly living fully with goodness. To be able to treat every living being around us with equality and sincerity, one must first learn to strip away the mask of the arrogant ego. The foundation of every lasting relationship, whether in the family or society, is always built on honesty and equal respect. Looking back at the root cause of the story above, the young girl and the fishmonger, out of fear of social prejudice, punishment, and loss of honor, chose to cover up their mistake with lies. They turned their fear into a knife that stabbed at the innocence of another, blaming circumstances to evade responsibility. This is a very common human reaction when we do wrong. We often tend to look for an objective reason or someone else to shoulder the punishment for us. However, a truly trustworthy person is not someone who never makes mistakes, but someone who has the courage to acknowledge their own flaws. Hiding the truth only creates a prison in the mind where you must constantly build more walls of lies to protect the original one. The most effective way to practice sincerity and humility is to face your weaknesses head on. When you happen to mess up a task or hurt someone, take a deep breath and proactively offer a straightforward apology. Never attach defensive excuses. Do not blame the weather, exhaustion, or the pressures of life. Have the courage to say you were wrong and that you will take responsibility to fix it. When you let go of the facade of perfection and accept your imperfections, you do not become weaker. On the contrary, that humility shatters all barriers, lightens the mind, and creates a strange magnetism that makes those around you feel safe and trusting in your presence. Once you have learned to be honest with the dark corners of your own soul, you will naturally develop a special capacity to perceive others more deeply. The highest purpose of understanding others is never to judge, hate, or categorize them as good or bad. When the Zen Master saw the girl's family coming to prostrate themselves and apologize, he did not show any sense of triumph. He did not utter words of reproach or lecture them about their cruel slander years prior. He simply smiled, accepting the change in their perception. He understood that their past wrongdoings were rooted in ignorance, from the extreme fear of a being who had not yet found the right path. Seeing through the principles of human behavior helps us draw the necessary boundaries to protect ourselves. When you understand that a person is acting poorly because they carry unhealed wounds in their heart, you will no longer feel resentment. You know how to take a step back and establish a safe distance so that their negativity does not encroach upon your energy. At the same time, you maintain empathy instead of responding with hatred. Furthermore, the ancients taught that he who knows himself is the one who is truly wise. Every mistake and every ugliness you see in others should be viewed as a clear mirror for self-reflection. When you witness someone lying, instead of curling your lip in disdain, quiet your mind and ask yourself if you have ever lied to protect your own face. When you see someone in an unreasonable rage, instead of distancing yourself and condemning them, slowly observe whether the seeds of anger and bossiness are still hidden within you. By taking the faults of others as lessons to correct yourself, you will gradually eliminate arrogance, erase ignorance, and continuously perfect yourself every day. The journey of a person's spiritual maturity is never about escaping difficulties or trying to cloak oneself in solemn titles. It is a continuous process of turning inward, using sincerity to illuminate the hidden corners, using humility to treat every karmic connection, and using a compassionate heart to embrace the imperfections of life. The winds of injustice, of praise and blame, or of gain and loss will never stop blowing through this life. They come not to knock us down, but to remind us of the fragility of the ego and the infinite power of stillness. Like the Zen Master nurturing a small life amidst the storm of public gossip, true stability always sprouts from within the darkest adversities. It shines through unconditional acts of kindness and a tranquil equanimity. And so, as we pass through all the ups and downs of honor and disgrace, may each of us be able to smile gently at the fluctuations of life and ask our own hearts whether our minds have truly found their dwelling in peace.